working, of course, about traditional architecture, but I'm also working as an art historian. So always like to see what the past could be an inspiration, but what we, with the new regulation rules and everything, we have to invent every day a new style, a new type of architecture. So we are trying to make the tradition alive. And maybe tomorrow we will do something different than yesterday, but we will be the past of the next generation also. So we are trying to improve and always do the best that we may do. But I will after introduce you a few projects that we did at the office.
Excellent. Thank you, William. I don't know if Maria Fernanda is here. No, I don't see her, so I will just remove it. James, are you here? Yes, James is here. Would you please present yourself? Okay, we'll wait for him a little bit. Hello, Ali. Would you please introduce yourself? Thank you.
Good evening. I'm in London. Must be your morning. My name is Ali Raza Sagachi. I'm the principal of Stanhope Gate Architecture. We are a firm based in London, specializes in classical and traditional architecture and urban design. We work throughout the world and the UK. And this evening, I wanted to talk specifically about two projects in Val d'Europe, for which I have a short presentation, and I'll be delighted to speak to you about it.
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to start with the presentation about 10 minutes. Let me check. Okay, it's okay, we have 10 minutes. Let me share with you my screen.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. We are chance to work with many foreign clients in the very luxury traditional buildings. And today, the project that I would like to present to you is the first time I presented in public, because this is the confidential project until it come commercialized. So it's commercialized since last year, so we can talk about it. This is the project in Russia that we designed before COVID. On the screen, you can see we have a project in China, in Russia, in France, and then we collaborate with John Simpson. And on the lower right side, we collaborate with Alireza, Stanhope Gate Architecture. I have a few points to talk about this project. First, it's the inspiration always from the heritage. I remember once I talked to Alireza, and he said there's no luxury comes from just nowhere. It always comes from heritage. I totally agree with him. In any culture, as long as we want something luxury, it has to be related to something past, something nice, something that people already understand and recognized. So this is my first point. And on this project, we had already several documents shows that this was the building exist before they demolished it. There's maybe 100 years ago. So we are inspired by the existing building. It's a very French style, very French style. As we can see, we have this kind of corner pavilions and some rustications, 3 or 4 stories high. The next point is the integration of modern and luxury. We cannot just copy and paste what we have done before. We have to use all this element plus something new that we know today thanks to our technology. So on this project, we created a facade with glass, purely glass, which means this facade cannot be structural. It has to hold itself with no support, and which is a huge challenge for the structure engineers and also for the glass engineers. The thickness of this glass is about 30 centimeters. In the winter time, it might have about 50 degrees Celsius between outside and inside. So how to make sure glass will not break due to the thermal problems. And also we have to cast all the elements in all architecture elements in glass. This is the big challenge too. However, we figure out all this, so we are building it right now. The synergy from the function, of course, we have also to think about our modern comfort. For example, we have a lot of loggias, like winter gardens, this kind of indoor-outdoor areas for the contemporary living, because people would like to have a view, would like to have more lights, even in the winter time. So the standard typical windows cannot satisfy anymore our needs. That's why we incorporate all this kind of industrial look element and recess of loggias to our project. The preservation and restoration, unfortunately, we don't have anything preserved or something that we can restore on this project. But I would like to mention it. If in any project you do, there's something we still can keep, we still can renew it. Let's just keep it as memories and as a heritage of it. We have to have the cultural sensibility and authenticity. And in this area of Moscow, there were many French style inspired building. So on the one part of this project, we have a very small area which we need to have a smaller building. So we built a kind of French urban house, like 2-3 stories with a mansard roof, very different to the contemporary building that they build around. And then we need to try to find a seamless transition. So not only we are creating the old buildings, this old buildings need to have a relation with the surrounding. For example, our project is just right next to a museum, which is the Art Craft Museum in brick. That's why we use the brick facade to our project. And of course, we would like to take this chance to celebrate the craftsmanship in all the details, all the interior design. We try to find all the best artists and handcraftship to do all this work that we almost lost it in the contemporary design architecture. For example, this is the one of the dining area of the entire building facing to the street. So we still can see all this artwork from like it was built in the 19th or 18th century. And at the end, it's about the sustainability and legacy. This is the important subject that everybody talked about it right now, and everybody try to use it. If it's possible, we will try to incorporate in our project. I think my time is quite there, so I will show very quickly the project. So this project is located just right in front of the Cathedral of Moscow, next to the river. Here is the cathedral. And all these are historical areas with many historical buildings, as you can see here. So there was this building at this corner, and this is the church that you can see here. And this is the art and craft museum in brick here. And this was the existing building, and our building is here. So we start to try to find the first is the branding, and key idea to convince the client, like we did for each project. For example, for Art Deco project or for Faubourg traditional project, we have this kind of logo. Okay, it's like a DNA of our project. And then we have to follow all the urban restrictions. So here I'm not going to talk about it. This is too complex. And then the transport team, and then the departments function, how we distribute the flat. And then we explain to our client what kind of architecture that we are going to use. So this is kind of French grand style. of the 18th century. So this is our first proposal. This is a very beginning, our first proposal. So the client likes it, but finally they find it a little bit too formal and too heavy. So that's why we add some metal elements and make it looks lighter. We remove a lot of decorative elements. So we designed a garden too. So this was some perspective view that you can see. And the final result, so this is the final result, a bit more contemporary. And at the same time, you have the profile of the classical buildings. Everything become more sharp and more clean. So we are right between the contemporary building of our neighbor and the art and craft museum on our left side. So I think my presentations will end to here. I would suggest that William take the lead for the next 10 minutes.
Thank you. About the projects, when we work for doing a new project, a new building in a town, usually we try to keep to find the atmosphere, the genius loci of the place. But sometimes there is no history, there is no geographic elements that may help us. So it's difficult also when we start a new city, because we have to manage to create the story of the place. So that's what we are doing. So there is two places. So I wanted to show you a place where Raymond is also working a lot in Val d'Europe. So it's a new city close to Paris, about 40 kilometers from the center of Paris. So it's built just close to the Disneyland park. And it was really interesting because you can see they start to build a ring like in Vienna, and then after they decided to build some new neighborhood in this ring. So there is some resorts, of course, because of the Disneyland the Disney activities, but there is also really a new town that is going on, and this town is supposed to have is a really 15 minutes walk town, because you can go to work, you can go to the restaurant, to shops, and for 15 minutes from where you are. So we build. I will show you some buildings that we did at the office, because like there is no history, as I said. Sometimes we try to create a kind of mythogenesis where we try to create the story of the place. So this is one of the main buildings in the main plaza of Val d'Europe. So it was past the former office of Disney company. And for example, some other part we try to be sometimes more classical, and also to avoid to have a very large building, because it could be not a good scale for the walking people in the street. We try to recreate like if it was some different part of the city, and different kind of buildings that was mixed together. And because now when we are doing a project, for example, for 100 apartments, it could be a very large, very long facade, maybe a little bit boring also in the street. So we try to recreate the size that we have usually in the traditional city. And also also we work a lot, for example, like the chimneys, the way we work with the sky, and the chimneys are really useful for technical use, same if it's not for eating. And in Disneyland, in Val d'Europe, you have different neighborhood, and with like in the park, you have a different kind of atmosphere or worlds, and that's the same in the city. So for example, one is more traditional, more classical, and here we work on the first building in Art Deco neighborhood, where so we try to create a connection between the traditional city and the center of the city and a new neighborhood. So that's why we have this kind of decoration, and we try also to create some new forms, for example, at the corners of the streets. And also for Disney, we work for them as urbanist, as urban planner, and we, for example, this neighborhood, it was supposed to be an English style neighborhood, so we try to recreate the different scales, the mews, the main square, as a traditional English city. And we did this kind of watercolors, just not for having all the details of the architecture, but just for creating the story, the storyboard in a way of the new neighborhood. And so we did one project at the office. So for example, here the corner of the streets were quite hard in proportion. It was not so not so nice. So we prefer to put one family house at the corner. So like this, we have more, I think, intensity between the different buildings. So we have also some social housing. So we try not to make social housing too visible, and so we try to make it discreet and quite chic. So at the entrance of one of the buildings, so more classical. This is also a part of the social housing. So we try to manage to have the best architecture style for everyone. And also we work a lot in Clamart. So we are in the south of Paris, something like 15 kilometers from the center. And here it was a different case. We were also urban planner for a part of the city, and it's this part. And it's different because it was to build a new neighborhood in a city that was already there before us, but it was only past factories without any architectural interest. And so we try to recreate a new neighborhood with a canal that is a connection between the different lots. So in red you have the building, and in green the main gardens, and also in blue the water. And for example, we have a very strong discussion with the city for putting the new school, because like there is a neighborhood just in front of this new part of the city. It was more easy to put the school in the middle, but we thought it was better to put the school at the back of the new neighborhood, because like this we hope that the people all around will cross the new streets, will use the new streets for going to the school with the children. And so maybe we will have a more mix between the population, between the people who were there before in social housing, most of them, and the people who live in the new neighborhood. So we try to really create a connection between the people. So at the center, so here, what we call F and A, B, it was more, we tried to create a story, any story that was never there, but we try to create it. So it's more traditional. So in a way, so you can see the buildings. Here, for example, we have a little dome at the corner of the street. We may use the brick and different details. And when we go For example, this is also some houses for students. And the farthest we go from the center of the neighborhood, we are more simple, maybe a little bit more Art Deco. And so this is a senior residence. And we work also with artists on the facade. We thought it was a good idea to mix also the different artistic intervention. And for example, that's the corner of the building. And at the back, like we are on a canal, we create a little tower, like if it was a mill in the past. Well, so it's like a story that is going on every day. And so some buildings are more modern, a new style of Art Deco. So on very close to the factories that are still remaining on the site. And on the opposite, you have also some kind of buildings. And of course, we build all this part of the city in about 8 years. And it's still going on. We have the 2 new projects, the last one that will be done. And we create some new, the project was well appreciated by people. And also we create some values for the building. So now we can use more, we have more details. We can use stone or wood, traditional architecture, and the traditional way to create the buildings. So, for example, we have some details now. We were glad because at the first project we did, we had no money at all. So now we are going to have more and more money also for building the project. And so it makes me think today to Parsifal, the opera, the kind of opera of Richard Wagner, was a very nice sentence said, "Raum wird Zeit." Here time becomes space. And I think it's interesting for us when we don't have any story, not to create something from scratch and without a connection of tradition, but to create, in fact, the time and the space that are not existing at the beginning. And we feel the best thing for us, I think, is to see that there is many people who live in this new neighborhood and they feel quite happy, and the city is still going on. But we also try, when we are designing a neighborhood, not to design everything. We keep some white pages, because in little proportion, because we don't know. For example, with the COVID 3 years ago, we didn't. It was not possible to think that it will happen, and so I think it's better not to finish everything, because when it's finished, it's almost dead. So we try to keep also the neighborhood alive, and I hope it will be used for us today, but also for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, William. Nice presentation. So the next, we are going to invite Ali Reza, if you are ready to present your project.
Yes, thank you, Raymond. Thank you. I'm just going to try and share my presentation. As I mentioned, I'm going to show you some of our projects. These projects are 2 projects in Val d'Europe, which me and my fellow director Simon Lilly from my practice carried out with the help of Raymond and his office as executive architects. But what I want to talk about, rather than specifics of why we did this or why we did that, is some really general underpinning principles about how we practice and what we do, why we do what we do in urban design and traditional architecture. Our approach to architecture is obviously based on the kind of Vitruvian principles of commodity, firmness, and delight. When we transpose this to urban design or large-scale projects rather than specific single en situation projects, we think of those triadic principles translating into place, architecture, and memory. And with traditional urbanism, we have the tools that are required to harmonize complexities, because most of these master plans or plans that come together are quite complex, and most of it is about negotiation of how things go together and how each project jostles for place. And they are often places of interaction of communities, like it was explained just previously about what Val d'Europe is. Val d'Europe is a large scale project in Europe. It's about it's about 20 times the size of Poundbury, with 6 times as much population. It obviously caters for basic human needs in terms of shelter and commodity. And we think urban design and traditional urbanism manages these complexities. And issues such as memory are very important. It's memory that made Warsaw be reconstructed in its previous image, because of the sense of belonging to the place by the people who wanted to occupy it. The same thing in Europe. Architecture is also very important, as I was mentioning. So it's memory, architecture, and place. So the architecture around the specific space contains the space and provides the backdrop for the memory and the physical form of the space to work. And the same thing, you can see how that kind of fails in a way with modern urbanism or modernist urban design, where there is really no sense of place, no sense of space. There's no architecture as a backdrop to contain the vessel, which is the human occupation, and that creates the memory. And really then the next thing is really about identity, and that's where architecture comes in. Our identity is obviously very important, and as the previous speaker was speaking, in certain aspects you have to create the myth, you have to create the genesis of what you're doing. But if you're operating within a very strong culture, for instance, in this case, within a backdrop of French architecture, then you have very rich grounding. Not to say that traditionalists are not guilty about doing things like that, because this sort of thing happens. This is a ghost town in Turkey, which has no sense of memory, no sense of place. It is quasi-traditional, as some might even practice like this and call themselves traditional architects. But you can see actually everybody is guilty of this. It is not just modernists or classicists. And you can see from a ruin of another ghost town, this is again in Turkey, that there's a semblance of scale. There's a certain rules, certain hierarchy of different buildings. So the parameters by which we work with these plans, and this is a small project we did on an island in Croatia with a plan of it. The parameters is you have to have defined centers, clear boundaries, positive space, strong shapes of buildings, shapes of spaces, local symmetries, interlocking of forms, as was described. We have muses and then the main buildings, how they lock together, ambiguity and contrast, repetition of buildings, not ad infinitum, breaking things up. Gradient is important. The relationship of void to solid. These might all sound generalities, but when you go into practice and start designing is very important. And also it's important to point out that urbanism and traditional urban design is not just about urban enclaves. It is to do with rural. A farmstead can be a very urban space, can create a very urban space with 2 or 3 very simple buildings. So this is the first of those projects. Sorry, I'm going very fast because I know I don't have much time, but I hope I can make it. So this is the first of 2 projects called Victoria Park, which was imagined. This is a building almost in a park setting in a way, opposite the park. So it was imagined as individual villas that would sit. This is the location of the plan again on the master plan. This is actually where it's located, with 2 buildings to the left with buildings of Porphyrios, to the right buildings of John Simpson. And then another project of ours, which is further along on this triangular trapezoidal shaped block. So here you can see the plan of the buildings as a certain number of villas overlooking the park, with a courtyard created and interlocking with a muse building in the center of the block itself. And firstly, watercolor studies of scale, breaking up the building. It's 147 units, I think, from memory. So the size of the brief didn't really dictate the size of the buildings or the position of the buildings. And here are the building realized. So these are all individual perceived as quite villa buildings, which house different apartments. To the right is a social housing, which is created and interlocked and interwoven with the remaining buildings. These are some of the streets. As the buildings turn the corner, you have two different entrances. Each building has several entrances entering into it. The gateway to the Mews, which locks and fills up a void between two buildings without really blocking the views out. The internal courtyard of the buildings, so on and so forth. And a kind of a compressed view of what a streetscape would look like, and the entrances.
Hey, Roland.
On the in the other, this is the other project, which is 2 blocks along, if you like, in which we looked at and examined the idea of the Faubourg, which is the kind of the old 18th century suburban architecture, almost coming up to a urban center, whereby buildings of 4-story with shops on the ground floor and various apartments and buildings above it could kind of occupy the space. To the other side, to the right, will be a series of buildings by Gabriella, by Piercarlo Bontempi, with a church in the center of and a seminary, which kind of forms a focal point to the building. This is the actual aerial view of the building with the internal courtyard and a Mews building. You can see the various size building, the Muses to the left, and then the building wrapping around the courtyard, a perimeter block, if you will, with shops on the ground floor. The shops haven't been occupied yet. The building hasn't been quite finished. And some special buildings, this one designed by Dominic Hartenberger, which was inserted into the center of the block, and when we collaborated with PCA on the project. And a kind of an end building, for instance, in a style of a hotel particulier, which then creates a gateway and locks in. And as you come into the courtyard, where you see the various rear sides of the building, which engage together, again, borrowing the classical language of architecture, of the French architecture. And the Mews building is very, very simple, with quite a calm internal street going through the block with selective views and the detailing that goes together. That's it, I think. I managed it in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alireza. So I believe the next one will be, we invite James McCarroy. I don't know if I pronounce it well.
You did a very good job. It's McCrary. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll share my screen. And while I do, I just want to say it's an honor to be able to present along with my colleagues. It's delightful to see your work. Are you able to see the screen now?
Yes.
Great. So I'll show you, my name is James McCrary. I should go back. Professor Burris asked me to show some of my current work. And what we're going to see today is all work that's on the boards. It's in the office. We have quite a bit of built work, but I'm showing you really most of these for the very first time in public. This is a small, I'm going to go back to this and I'm going to pause it. This is a small Roman Catholic church in a village on the eastern seaboard of the United States in the mid-Atlantic states in North Carolina, where the village is filled with churches of different Christian denominations, and the Catholics have been in this building over here for years, and they're finally stepping up to the front row, if you will, by commissioning a serious church building for the first time. And they asked us then to, knowing the importance of the civic nature of the church and its role in the larger community, they asked us to design a building that was right for the church and also right for the village at the same time. We're in construction drawings on this project at the moment. It's actually quite small. It seats just about 300 people and not anymore. In interior, the community is fairly wealthy, and so there's a high expectation for interior finishes as well for the church. Very typically, what we do is very much like Alizera was encouraging. We take a very large commission like this one. This is a church and school in Colorado, in the Rocky Mountain area of the United States. And we break the project into a great number of buildings so that we can thereby make great urban space for the project, for the people who are going to be using it, so that it's not simply this very large architectural blob, if you will, but a series of buildings that that relate to each other, and in that way become analogous of the relationship of the people to the church and the individuals to each other. Here you see a very large church, an office building, a high school, an upper school, and then also a primary school for younger children, and then a gymnasium building that both of the schools then would share. And they form a quadrangle, a courtyard, for the larger community to use. And then there's the church here. Also, we're mindful that, especially on public buildings, that the interior of the building is just as civic and just as public as the exteriors, much like the Noli map of Rome demonstrated, perhaps for the first time in print, that the interior is just as important. And so we really work hard in making the interior beautiful as well. Here is a group of buildings that forms a Catholic community center in Louisiana at a university that is operated by the state, not by the church. And so you have the church building, but you also then have the secular, more community, church community buildings that form its perimeter. And that's actually a delight. And that's also then the interior, here, the sanctuary for the Catholic Church. And from here, you can get a sense of this grouping of smaller, different, and sort of unique building designs that all come together to form a larger whole, that then at the whole then embraces the larger, reaches and engages with a larger civic realm. We'll get another one here coming soon. And there's the interior again. This is back in the Carolinas. This is in South Carolina, and this is a similar kind of project, so that this is a church and a community center, also at a state university. So it's a very interesting intersection of the church and the state in the United States of America, which is fairly rare. But the buildings reach out and line the street, and so that the church can become the center, but also the interior of the church then becomes very much a civic space, so that people who are curious by means of the architecture are rewarded when they come to the interior. It's a very unique challenge here. This is another Catholic church, but not with respect to a university, but a very large parish, and this is in the state of Georgia, near the coast of the Atlantic. And here what we have is a Catholic church that is almost always dedicated to Roman architecture. And the client here wanted to be sure that there was an embrace of Greek architecture inside and out. And so I said, well, we not only need to embrace Greek architecture, we need to embrace Greek planning. And so we have, in order to arrive at the nature of Greek space, so it's simply not Greek architecture on a page, but rather Greek space, in fact, so that there's a public agora space generated by a school building, a parish hall, an office building, and the church itself, all centered around the fifth thing, which is the space itself. And a really delightful project. They also want a very, very large tower. So you can see that there. It's a really delightful and challenging and what wonderful, wonderful project. And someone mentioned John Simpson. He's a good friend. I very much admire his work, and you hopefully see hints of that here on the right. At a college in Kansas, which is right in the heart of the United States of America, there is a campus called Benedictine College. And here the president of the college wanted to do three things. Destroy an old library designed in the brutalist style, which he has now accomplished. He wanted to then build a new library, and he also wanted to build a center for the study of the United States Constitution. And so we combined all of those two uses, the library and the Institute for Constitutional Studies, in this one building. And also he had a vision for it. And the vision was that it should be inspired by the building in which the Constitution was imagined and written and adopted, which is called Independence Hall. And that's a building located in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania. I'll go back to that. There's actually now in North America now a more than century-long tradition of institutions building buildings that are inspired by the design of Independence Hall. I think this one will be the 13th or 14th such offering by architects through the last century and a half in North America. So if you take a look at Independence Hall and take a look at this, you'll see inspiration, but you'll also see invention. So you'll see, as Thomas Gordon Smith would say, rule and invention. And here then is a project that is probably the newest for us. This is a campus for a major shrine for the Ukrainian Catholic Church. And it is to be built near Pittsburgh, actually in the proper city of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania, in the far western part of the state. So this is not simply a church, it's actually a very, very grand shrine. The top of the dome there is 250 feet in the air. I'll tell you how many meters that is in just a second. It's way up there. And then there's a small village, if you will, of guest and visitor buildings and places where people can stay overnight. There's also then the very traditional bell tower. That's a 76-meter building height up to the top here. A very, very grand, very large scale shrine building. And then the last one I'll show you is, without any question, the most remote. This is a monastery of new design. Everything you see here is to be new. It's on a hilltop in Tasmania, in Australia. And there's a great order of monks there now who've commissioned us to design their monastery for them. Monasteries are, especially in locations like this, are very, you have to build everything. They need to be entirely self-sufficient. And so the program becomes, the brief, as our European colleagues would call it, is very complicated, but the architecture needs to be simple and clear and beautiful. So also civic and truthful and good. And I will end it right there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. So I don't know if we have any other architects come back to this group. Let me see if Maria here. No. So if Gabriele here. No. Richard here.
I do believe that might be our session.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you for these really beautiful renderings and so on. There was a question to James regarding the software you use.
PowerPoint.
For the renderings.
No, I know, yeah. All the models that we build, everything you see is built in-house here, and it's all the models are SketchUp, and the rendering is what's it called?
Enscape.
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 Yep. And also,
thank you. It's great. Thank you.
thank you. We work very purposefully to make our models look like models rather than make them look like a final product. I feel very strongly about that it should look like a model rather than like the final.
Thank you. It's excellent.
Thank you very much for your kind words, sir.
Let me check here. We're in the Rome room, right?
See.
Yes, I think we have 5 minutes for questions.
Yes, thank you. So let me throw a question out there. All of the speakers here are highly experienced architects with literally years in buildings and fabulous resumes. I want to know, I want to ask, what did you learn in the last couple of years that you didn't know before?
Tu peux allumer la lumière là?
That's a good question.
Want to go first, William?
Yes, very good question. I think that at the office, we were obliged to learn how to work with other architects because it's supposed to be very easy, but it's not so easy for me because we have our habits, the way we work, the references we want to share. And for the last year, I think first we have our company is now 20 years old, but it's still a young company for me. And I think that we were obliged to develop the project, to have new clients and everything. And now I think it's like stopping to be a baby or a child. It's the time of being an adult, and it's a time where we need to practice more with like tag. With some other firms, also with the schools, and now it may be. I think I learned that we need for having a very alive traditional architecture. We need to transmit, and I try now to have some new trainees, some new young architects also at the office for sharing our ideas and trying to make a tradition still alive.
Very true. Thank you, William. So as for me, I would say to enlarge the time scale of our clients, because most of the time, if you are facing to a contractor, this contractor, they are not the people which are in front of you, they are not the decision maker. They are just be there, they are employees, they have a budget to respect, and so they will try to cut many things from your project, from your design, and in order to reduce the cost. By reducing the cost, which means they enlarge the benefit. And so I try to be I try to explain them even the little decision that you make right now, it will be impact to this building that we're going to build, and it will remain for maybe 100 years or 200 years. So if it's a wrong decision, you will make it wrong during 200 years. And your career in this office, in this company, will be maybe 10 or 20 years maximum. And how can you decide a decision right now and not looking at the how to say the result that you are going to impact to this buildings? That's why we are here to help you to make a good design. If you have a budget problem, please let us know, and not just kill the cornice or the bands or the column by yourself. Please tell us and let us look at your Excel file together and try to figure out where are the most costly problem, and then we can find a solution good for you and good for us, which means the final words of the facade must not be pronounced by the client, has to be pronounced by the architect.
Oh, can I go next? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the last 2 years, well, I don't know whether the last 2 years have been an education, but there's certainly been an epiphany. We came out of COVID, and during COVID, everybody thought there would be a dystopia after COVID. Nobody would go back to the office. Nobody would want to interact. And as traditionalists, our architecture is very much centered around the human being. And the idea that people would be locked in their home forever or for an extended amount of time, not engage with each other in public spaces and gatherings, office buildings would disappear as a typology altogether, and we would be just all glued to our technology, was almost like a apocalyptic prospect. So what I learned is that what I always believed is that if you work in traditional architecture, which is based, a nature-based, a humanistic attitude, and a human-based architecture, a nature-based architecture, that human nature does not change. People have come back. They still want to participate in public spaces. They still want to interact. They still want to work in the office. And whilst their interaction may have been somehow mediated by what has happened to them in the short term, in the long term, one should not get excited with short-term transient phenomena. And the same goes for technology, because it is all transient. And if you take the long-term view and go to the roots of what you do and why you do it for, then you won't be sidelined or sidetracked rather, or go down rabbit holes with various events that happen daily now in our world.
I'll jump in and say that two things. One is very much like Monsieur Pesson, where I've become inspired in very large part by my new dean, Mark Ferguson, at the Catholic University of America. I've become much better director of an architecture office. That's one thing I've learned in the last couple of years. And another thing that I've not learned, but become ever more and more and more certain of, is that we traditionalists are right. Everyone else is circling the drain. They might be out in the outer loop, but they have entered the event horizon, right, of their own demise. And I think that that's something that we all need to be always cognizant of, is that we really truly are on the right path. We are in the right ways of doing things and thinking about the future of human coexistence and design and self-organization on this wonderful planet given to us, and that we're great stewards of it. And this is the right way of doing things.
I think that was.
I think we're all in agreement on that, but I think it's also important to say it out loud.
Hear, hear. And I really want to thank you for making that statement at the end of this session. Thank you all, Raymond, for moderating, William, Alireza. All of you are inspirations, great practitioners that I think you're all laying the groundwork for future work. And thank you again for the inspiration.